Okay.
Well, we could just go, I guess, but I don't know what the right answer is here.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't feel like there's a delay, but I could be wrong. Like,
Oh, you're wrong.
you're delayed there. Like, you're delayed in responding.
No, no, no. You're delayed in responding. See how it works? We're both fucked.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Do you want me to reboot again?
Maybe.
I can. Like, it's not a problem. Okay.
It just over the course of a 35-minute conversation, those are going to really add up.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Jesus. Holy fuck. Okay. Yeah, you better reboot.
Good morning, buddy.
How are you?
Oh, doing substantially better after this series with the Yankees. Feeling like it's just regular baseball again. Like we're not
The sky isn't falling
the
anymore.
sky isn't falling, we're not in a vice. It's just great. Hello and welcome to the Walk Off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford, joined by always by my good friend Adam Mack.
Hello, hello.
And we did it. The Blue Jays are no longer in the midst of a losing streak. We'll get into that. We'll obviously talk Alek Manoah's debut and also this sticky substance fiasco in the Major League Baseball realm will not go away. So we will do a deep dive on that. Our guest today, loved this guy, loved talking to him, and I loved his story. James Dykstra. He's a high leverage bullpen guy for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, the AA affiliate of the Toronto Blue Jays. This is a guy who was DFA'd from his AAA team with the Texas Rangers in 2018. Now, he had been drafted 3 different times. He was pretty much discarded by affiliate baseball. He went to the Independent League, the Atlantic League, and started to figure out his velocity. He started doing a bunch of velocity training and wound up hitting 100 miles an hour. Now, James is actually 30 years old. So this is a guy that most teams weren't even looking at. And with the independent ball, sometimes it's just tough to be scouted in general. So he and his girlfriend went about getting the attention of scouts in a different way. It's a very interesting story. And it's a story that's all about determination and never giving up. It was great. And the cool thing with Dykstra, I mean, he is 30. He's been around pro ball for 12 years and he throws 100 miles an hour. It is by no means impossible that this is a man we see in the Blue Jays bullpen this year if there's a few more injuries, which
Absolutely.
it doesn't seem like the injuries are stopping, right? Of course, our guest is brought to you like they always are by YourRate.ca. Mortgage broker Darren Brown will be there to help you. Mortgage rates are going up. Interest is going up come June 1st. There are still some lower rates available that you can lock into. So check it out with Darren. That is YourRate.ca. It's online. It's all paperless. It's all COVID friendly. YourRate.ca. Our socials. Instagram, you can check us out, the Walk Off Podcast, and on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. Of course, all of our interviews are up on our YouTube page, the Walk Off Podcast, for your viewing pleasure. Let's do it, buddy. Some good news.
We
I
did
mean, I
it.
know the doubleheader yesterday, the Jays lost the last one to the Yankees. Robbie Ray on the mound, but the game before that was Alek Manoah's debut. Now, this is a dude. Let's face it. Talk about hype. Have we seen hype like this since after, like, really, he's probably the most hyped guy we've seen since Bo and Vladdy, right?
Yes and no. It's been short-term hype.
Mm-hmm.
Their hype was sustained over multiple seasons,
Yes.
right? Whereas he wasn't really on anybody's radar other than ours until maybe spring training.
Yeah.
But since spring, I mean, he's been in the J system for a couple years now.
Drafted
But
in the first round in 2019 out of college.
maybe it's because of Nate Pearson was still the top
Scuffling.
prospect in
Yeah.
everybody's mind. There was excitement for him. We were still waiting to see him. It just felt like Alek Manoah up until the end of spring. I don't think many people knew his name.
And then all of a sudden, he had a huge spring, and everyone got all excited. Baseball America got on board. All of a sudden, Alek Manoah was ranked as one of the top 100 prospects in all of baseball. He climbed the prospect rank within the Blue Jays organization, and then got slotted in at AAA this year, despite the last time he pitched professional ball being low A with the Vancouver Canadians before they got the bump up to the high A affiliate. He'd only pitched 20 major or professional innings before this year. And then he pitched 18 with the Bison. So he was at 38 professional innings, gets the call up. A lot of controversy, right? There were two sides to these groups. A group of people, the fandom that was like, thank goodness we've been screaming for this man to be called up since the beginning of spring, right? And then there was the other camp that was like, ooh, are the Jays bringing him up out of necessity? Like, is this a desperation move? And let's face it, it was a little bit of a desperation move. They needed innings. And when you looked at the system, the guy who was the hottest, the guy at AAA, was Alek Manoah. So they brought him up, and then he wound up going 6 innings. Here, let me just bring up his stat line here just so I'm not missing anything, because it was pretty phenomenal. 6 innings, 2 hits. That was the one I wanted to make sure on, because it didn't even sound real when I was about to say it. I'm like, I know it's 2 hits, but I want to see it in black and white in front of me before I say it, because that's how phenomenal this was. 0 earned runs, 2 walks, 7 Ks to the New York Yankees, making his MLB debut at Yankee Stadium. And I mean, the only pitcher in Blue Jay history with 6 scoreless innings and 7 Ks in their MLB debut, Alek Manoah. Talk about living up to hype.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, there were factors that were indicating he probably would. You know,
that's true.
He's not 20 years old, right? He's not a Simeon.
He was out of college when he was drafted. He's 23 years old. He's older than Vladdy. He's the same age as Bo, you know?
Exactly. He did have a great spring pitching against major league pitchers. His last start of the spring was against the Yankees, where, again, he had like 7 or 8 or 9 straight strikeouts in a row, and maybe that's where the hype began. But
another big thing about yesterday's start too is that it was in a doubleheader, so they were 7-inning games. So for him to go 6 innings and save the bullpen like he did was so fantastic, especially with how overworked this bullpen has been. Even with the off day, with the day being them being rained out, the bullpen is overused.
and I think that just adds an extra level of how impressive what he did was. If we're being completely honest, like, pitchers are such creatures of habit and routine. This kid is about to make his big league debut. I mean, if you follow
in the
him on
most
Twitter,
iconic city for baseball out there, you know?
it's huge. And I mean, I'm watching his Instagram stories, and he's taking videos in the elevator, and he's like, here we go, it's game day, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets rained out.
Yeah.
So, like, on the precipice of the biggest day of his life, he gets a last minute, actually, let's do things and mess with you. And then he still comes out and rises to the occasion. Like, he's just...
with his mom and dad in the crowd, 40 plus family members in the crowd, just screaming and loving every second of it. I mean, the shots of his mom and the shots of his family were heartwarming.
Man,
it
I was
was
getting
just
goosebumps yesterday.
Oh, it was so cool to watch. Absolutely. Just watching this man's success being celebrated by his entire family and his support system. It was great. It was so cool. And I mean, without a doubt, this man has earned himself some rope now. He can settle into this Blue Jays rotation, a rotation that they desperately need a guy who can carry the ball. They desperately need a right-hander who can break up their 3 best pitchers of Mats, Ray, and Ryu, right? I mean, it's been so left-handed hitter heavy that it's been easy for opponents to stack their lineups, right? And not need to adjust, get used to those lefties and just really dial in. So I think this is really good for the rotation. Let's talk the Yankees Blue Jays. Because, buddy, does this team ever show up to play when it is the New York Yankees? 6-3 on the year. They've played 9 of their 19 games. And I know we talked at the beginning of the year that if this team is going to compete for a wild card spot, it is imperative that they win 9 of those 19 games at the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
We're 3 wins off from that bare minimum. And they've looked good against the Yankees. Even the games they've lost have not been juggernauts being blown out. You know, like it's not like the juggernaut Yankees once again handle the Jays. It's just we lost by a run or two.
Mm-hmm.
Some bad bounces here and there. I mean, when we said the Jays needed to win 9 of 19 against the Yankees, we didn't expect them to be so in the hole with the Red Sox and the Rays right now.
That's true.
But no need to focus on the negatives when we're in the middle of a little bit of a positive upswing here. Of course, after losing 6 in a row, 4 to the Rays and being swept, 2 heartbreakers to the Red Sox, games they shouldn't have lost. You know, like, and we went over this on Tuesday, 2 games in extra innings to the Rays, a blow and save in the 9th to the Rays. Like, just very difficult losses to deal with, quite a skid to deal with. And then to watch them go into New York on Tuesday and win 6-2. Matt's having a phenomenal game. Steven Matz stepped up big time for the Jays. And then to watch Manoa do the same thing. Robbie Ray struggled. It's funny, Robbie Ray didn't even struggle. But Robbie Ray's Achilles heel this year has been, he is a strike thrower. He is throwing darts. He's filling up the zone. You love to see it, especially with how much he struggled with his walks last year. And that's kind of been his Achilles heel throughout his career, is walks. So he's throwing so many strikes. His home runs are up. And that's what killed him yesterday, right? He gave up a couple long balls to the Yanks. They won 5-3. But the desperation that the Jays were in, it feels like it's gone now. It feels like we're just watching baseball again.
Yeah, it was bleak for a while.
Right?
We're feeling better.
100%. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. And I've been saying this since the beginning of the season. Wait till Lourdes gets hot. Wait till Lourdes gets hot. But he always does this, right? He doesn't jump out of the gate very quickly. You start to even question if what you saw in the past was real, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you look down and you're like, wait, Lourdes has hit 400 over his last 11 games? His average is all of a sudden at 250? Like, it was at 180 3 weeks ago, right? Like, this is a guy that he quietly got hot, and he does this all the time. And the thing with Lourdes, when he gets hot, the only thing I've seen him get cooled down by is injuries.
Yeah.
So, I mean, knock on wood, fingers crossed. But boy, oh boy, does this lineup ever look deadly and look long when Lourdes Gurriel is sitting in that 6 or 7 hole and he's hitting 400 over the last 11 games.
Yeah. I mean, the top of the order is wild.
It's humming.
Best in baseball.
You're probably right.
We've got Springer
The top
coming
4?
back, who's going right to the top.
Yeah.
Leadoff man. Maybe mid-June we could see him.
I mean, Marcus Semien is the only one in baseball that is neck and neck with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. here. Well, Slim Daddy Vladdy for wins above replacement. They're both neck and neck. They're both right around 3 wins above replacement. It's not even the end of May. And, buddy, we saw this coming, didn't we? We said when they signed Marcus Semien, both you and I were like, I love this signing. How can you not love them bringing on a guy who in 2019 hit 33 home runs and was 3rd in MVP voting? How can you not be excited? A lot of Blue Jays fans took the other side. A lot of Blue Jays fans said they're spending too much money. $18 million is too much to give this guy. Why are they only signing him to 1 year? I don't understand why they're not going out and getting pitching. And now, where would we be without Marcus Semien on this team currently? And now those same people who are complaining at him are like, sign him. No amount of money is too much, right?
I know. Yeah, it's
which is also going to upset them because there's no way they signed Marcus Semien.
Is there a way? I keep trying to tell myself there's a way we sign him.
I know I do too,
I
man, because
don't
I
know how it
love the guy.
fits.
I just can't see it. Especially when you look at this shortstop class and you're like, okay, Trevor Story is probably number one, but is he? Is Simeon giving enough right now this year that if you look at his numbers, he's better than Carlos Correa right now. He's older, he's 31, but maybe there is a team out there that's like, you know what? I would rather spend a buttload of money for 3 years on Marcus Semien, give him 70 million over 3 years, a guy who can move to second easily, a guy who can play shortstop, a guy who hits for average, a guy who hits for power, a guy with a ton of wins above replacement potential. Like, if he winds up being the most sought after shortstop on the free agent market, a market that is the richest in shortstops Major League Baseball maybe has ever seen, I just can't see a fit with the Jays.
This is the only way I could see him sticking with the Jays. It is such a deep shortstop. Ugh. Let's cut that right out. It is such a deep shortstop market. Supply and demand. Maybe we can sign him for another 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And maybe there's an appeal there in him thinking, you know what, instead of competing with 6 other top 10 shortstops for money, maybe I wait a year and I'm the only gem available. Right?
Now, I really like that way of thinking. The only bump in the road in that thinking is his age.
Yes. He is, like you said, he's 31. The
He
longer
probably
he
has
waits,
one big contract left in him, and he may not wish to risk it.
You're right. You're right. So I don't know.
But who knows? It's going to be a very interesting free agency anyways, with the CBA the way it is and the MLB and the MLB PA looking like they're going to come to a head. It will be interesting. I hope that the Jays keep Marcus Semien, but that said, maybe I don't. Like, it's so hard to judge where Jordan Groshans, where Austin Martin, where some of these top prospects in the Jays system are going to fall into place. And I know we've brought this up on the show before too, right? A lot of their top prospects are infielders. They're shortstop rich right now in this Blue Jays organization. Maybe a 31-year-old shortstop signed to a 6-year, $150 million deal. Like, he's probably going to be pushing what? Like, the George Springer deal is actually a great comparable for Marcus Semien going into this offseason.
I think 4 years, 150 million.
Well, 6 years, probably 150 is what I would say Marcus could get. And then that would take him to 37 years old. We'll see. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens in this free agent market with shortstops, because it is so deep and because there are some real stud superstars that are game changers, elite guys. Did you have anything else to add, Blue Jays wise, before we get into this sticky stuff?
One thing, Vlad Guerrero Jr. wise, I've seen some people discredit what he's done so far because the Jays are playing in Dunedin, which is such a hitter-friendly ballpark. I don't think the outfield wall plays a factor when you're hitting the ball 460 feet to dead center. So
yeah,
suck on that.
So he won't clear the stadium in New York. Big deal. Yeah. He's still hammered it like 440 feet. So
yeah, these aren't barely going out. So whatever. No, stop that. Anyways, that's all I gotta say.
I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. So this could be a long one. The sticky stuff situation is getting stickier by the day, and things are coming to a head here in Major League Baseball. I don't know if you remember back in the early 2000s when everyone was worried about where the bees were going. Do you remember this, Adam?
Yeah, of
There was
course.
all
We
this
were gonna we
talk
were gonna
about
run out of food.
exactly. They're like, the bees are disappearing. We can't figure out what's causing it. And I don't know if you even heard, because they did figure out what was causing it. Did you hear what was causing the bees disappearing?
No.
The most obvious thing in the world: pesticides.
Oh.
We are what was causing the bees to go away. And they started to figure out that, oh, of course it's pesticides, this substance that we're adding to this environment that has no business being there. Okay. Now, this is a rough comparison I'm making, obviously, but let's get into what happened a few days ago. St. Louis manager Mike Shildt. Okay. It was the St. Louis Cardinals playing the Chicago White Sox. And it was the 6th or 7th inning. And Shildt calls to the bullpen. Out of the bullpen comes Giovanni Gallegos. Okay. And he obviously has some stuff on his hat. Now, in his defense, ball players do this. Okay. They wear the same hat all year long. A lot of guys don't even wash it because they're superstitious and they're disgusting men. Right. So, yeah, he comes out with what is obviously dirt, and who knows? It could have been pine tar. It could have been something. But Joel West comes out and tells Gio that he needs to change his hat if he wants to stay in the game. Now, Cards manager Mike Shildt loses it. Right? He feels that they are taking an exception at the Cardinals when they're, in his opinion, not the problem with what's going on. So he gets ejected after losing his mind on West. Gio changed his hat, pitched a clean inning, looked great. Fast forward to the press conference after the game, and Mike Shildt unloads. And if you have a spare 10 minutes, I really suggest that you check it out. Google it, go on YouTube. It's up everywhere. And he really, for 10 minutes, he talks about what's going on in Major League Baseball right now. He's super candid. And to paraphrase, basically what he's talking about is he started the presser off with saying, listen, every pitcher has rosin and sunscreen on their hat. He's a guy who wears his hat all year round, just like we just brought up, right? He's like, everybody has a dirty hat. So when he's going off in that first minute or two, you start to think that he's just burying the problem, right? He doesn't want to get into it. That was not the case. He was actually just taking exception on that it was the St. Louis pitchers that were being targeted, when, in his opinion, none of the St. Louis Cardinals pitchers are using the super sticky stuff. So that's what he brought up to the media, right? He's like, I know what you guys are worried about, and that it's that he could be loading the ball up with rosin and sunscreen grip. And a lot of pitchers do this. In fact, we talked to Anthony Telford, right?
Former Expos pitcher.
That's right. And he even mentioned, in fact, he even brought up pine tar, that hitters don't mind when a pitcher does this because they don't want to be hit.
Extra
They
control.
want the pitchers to have a little bit of grip on the ball,
Especially
right? That's pretty much what Telford
cold,
said,
yeah,
eh?
on a cold day, especially. Ball's a little extra slick. Absolutely.
Then Shildt goes on to say that what is happening more recently is that there is a super sticky substance out there, a sticky substance that's making the ball do things it has never done before, giving spin rates that has never been seen before, making the ball dip and dive like it has never done in Major League Baseball history. And Shildt likes to think that no pitchers on the Cards are using this extra sticky stuff, but he even admits, he's like, I don't know for sure. He's like, I can't guarantee it, and I hope that they are not. That said, it is incredibly prevalent right now. And of course, what he's referring to is Trevor Bauer sticky stuff. And it's not necessarily Trevor Bauer that started this, okay? This goes back years to Bubba Harkins in Los Angeles. He was the pitching coach for the Angels there, and he is well known as a guy who developed a substance, and it was kind of a mix of Pepsi and pine tar that has been boiled down and combined with some elements added to it, and then guys are putting it in their gloves, Okay. They're putting it under their hats, on the back of their necks, right? And that's to load the ball up with this extra sticky grip. I know we talked about Baseball Doesn't Exist, the video that they released,
Great YouTube
that Trevor
channel.
Bauer put out. I know you just freshly watched it. Maybe you just want to kind of remind everyone what it was about here.
It basically goes over the impact of adding 400 RPM to your spin rate. The value of, baseball's very analytics. Everything is tracked, right? The whiff rate, which is the rate at which someone swings and misses a ball that is pitched, right? If you had a 90-mile-an-hour fastball and the whiff rate is 6%, and you add 10 miles an hour to it, the difference in whiff rate is not the same as the same velocity with an extra 400 spin rate, because the ball doesn't dip. It looks like it rises. So it's more valuable to add spin rate than it is to add velocity. Obviously,
the average spin rate is 1,900 revolutions per minute. So you add 400 to 600 revolutions to that, and now you're at 2,500. You're at 2,400. And that is exceptionally high. That is incredible spin rate. Sorry, go ahead.
And more to your point about these new science lab sticky substances.
Like, that's the thing people need to remember here that we're talking about. This sticky substance stuff, like, guys like Trevor Bauer went to scientists to figure this out. Like, this is stuff that's being made in labs, right? Well, this isn't a guy putting a little pine tar on a ball in 1997, right? Like, this isn't a mixture of rosin and sunscreen and sweat from the back of a guy's neck. You're using Bunsen burners and pipettes. Like, what the heck?
This is some Breaking Bad stuff. I don't know how much of a football fan you are in terms of some of the technology that's going on there. Wide receivers have these, they look like like batting gloves, essentially, for catching. But the grip that is on those, and they're not illegal. This is totally legal, right? So they have the grippiest material that these balls can have, or that these gloves can have. And I've seen videos of these wide receiver gloves where there isn't even a hand in the glove. There's a football on the table, and they just take these gloves and they like drop it down and then pick it up, and the ball is attached to it without a hand inside, right?
Wow.
I saw a video of someone with some of this Pepsi Stickum, and they were bare hand out like this with a cinder block hanging from their hand. That's how grippy it is. You're not getting that with pine tar and sunscreen.
No.
This is super glue.
And this is something that has only become more prevalent since about 2016, 2017 is when we started to see this first appear. Garrett Cole was the first guy to truly... And listen, I'm not even blaming Garrett Cole, because obviously this was a thing that was happening before Garrett Cole, but he was the guy who went from a big-bodied pitcher with a lot of skill and a lot of good stuff that couldn't quite put it together, and then all of a sudden he started using sticky stuff and became the best pitcher in baseball. Trevor Bauer was screaming it from the rooftop. Trevor Bauer was one of the guys who hated this new sticky stuff to begin with. And when baseball ignored it, because baseball does not want to approach this because they do not want another black eye on the sport, right? As it is, everyone's like, scandal. Baseball's a bunch of cheaters because of the steroid thing, right? So now baseball's in this weird scenario where the commissioner and the owners are like, ugh, do we really wish to crack down on this and make it look like we're cheating again? Right? Especially after the Astros scandal, the sign stealing stuff. It's just like cheating has become synonymous with baseball, and this is something that they don't wish to deal with.
And you've seen even the pseudo investigations that they've been putting out where, well, we're going to collect samples from the balls, we're going to confiscate things, we're going to run lab tests. They don't want to catch anybody. They just want to be able to say, look, we tried, we were looking. It's a
like
false
Mike
gesture.
Schilt with the Cardinals brought this up in his press conference. He was talking about he knows baseball doesn't want to deal with this. And that was one of the things he was upset about. He's like, you're going to make my pitcher change his hat when we know darn well there's guys out there using super sticky substance and they're not the ones being attacked. Right? It was a weird move by Joel West. It was a weird move in general. But basically what we're getting down to here is I want to go back to the B thing for a second, right? Everyone is just like, what is wrong with baseball? Why do no hitters mean nothing anymore? Why are pitchers so much better than they ever used to be? And people have just ignored it. It's right there. I really do believe this sticky substance stuff has become so prevalent and gives pitchers such an advantage with their spin rate and the things that they can do with the ball that is why we're not seeing the contact we used to see. It's why it's all strikeouts and home runs, because hitters have kind of just been like, well, I mean, if we're only going to hit it so often, we might as well hit it as far as we can. Yeah. I mean, I've got some stats here too. I'll go over, but this is, and I know we mentioned this right off the top. This is coming to a head. Josh Donaldson said just yesterday, he keeps a catalog, a library, a video library of cheaters with this stuff that is obviously using it, and he's releasing it. Now, I don't think we necessarily need Josh Donaldson to release this. There's already plenty of proof out there. I know you were just telling me about the guy you follow on TikTok. What's his name again?
His account is at hey_commie. I'll just put a link to it in the description if you're really interested. But he's got, I would say, 200 videos on his page. 50,000 followers at this point. But everything is just, I mean, he's holding his camera at his TV, recording these guys as they're putting their bare hand in their glove and then pulling it out. And you can literally watch as it like sticks and they have to like pull it off. Like, it's absurd. It's
a little stat.
That's how sticky it is. You literally have to pull your hand
away.
It
off the glove. So think what you can do to manipulate the ball with that sort of extra stick. The way that you can spin it off of your fingers that would never be able to be done without that substance.
Well, and that's why we're watching like the resurgence of the screwball.
Yes.
Right? Which is a ball, for those of you that don't know, when you're throwing, the general tendency for curveballs, for sliders, is to break kind of with your arm movement, right? So across your body like this, not to break the other. I'm doing a bad job with the video here on YouTube, right? But if I'm a right-handed thrower, I'm going to throw it and it's going to curve or slide down and to my left. Whereas a forked ball breaks the opposite way and slices. If you're a golfer, you know what a slice is, right? But we're starting to see that again because guys can throw with a stupid spin on it, and it's able to have these like, it looks like they're playing wiffle ball, what they're able to do with some of these balls.
It's really wild. And what some of these guys are doing is they're starting to really watch pitchers. And this is a stat that kind of blew me away about Trevor Bauer. Okay. So, and I know we kind of talked about this before we even hit record on the podcast here, but Trevor Bauer was being monitored. Every time a new fresh ball was thrown out to him, he was going to the inside of his glove with his hand. 71% of the time. Okay. When the ball was just thrown back from the catcher, he does it 6% of the time. Think about what a huge gap statistically that is. And the only thing that makes sense is that he's going to his sticky substance. Trevor Bauer fought so hard for baseball to crack down on this. He kind of came out and said, fine, if you guys aren't going to crack down on this, then I'm going to come up with the best sticky substance ever invented ever. Hired scientists.
He went full dark side.
Like, here's the thing. They need to do something about this, or this lack of offense, this one-dimensional style of baseball that we've become accustomed to over the last 2 years is only going to get worse. It's only going to become more prevalent. Pitchers are only going to become more dominant. I know this is something we talked about on previous podcasts, is that great pitchers are now unhittable, good pitchers are now great, and mediocre pitchers are now good.
Look at that guy in Baltimore. What's his name? Means. I can't think of his
Yeah,
first name.
yeah.
Who the fuck is this guy? I've never heard of him in
No,
my life. And now he's
yeah,
got like an ERA under 1.
yes. John Means.
John Means. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's
No,
countless
it's a great
guys
example.
that are exactly in his category. And it's the same thing, like you said, as steroids.
And Means is a guy, just like Bauer, just like Garrett Cole, that there is hundreds of videos of him loading the ball up.
Yeah, look it up, Google it.
And one thing to really remember here about baseball is that the tiniest of advantages can lead to extreme success.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is why steroids got so out of hand. I mean, a prime example of this is Chris Calabello. Blue Jays fans will remember this from 2015 because he came out of nowhere, 31 years old, a career AAA guy. Sure, he got his cup of coffees a few times at the big league level.
He's a Davis type.
He's a Jonathan Davis with a little bit more pop. And then all of a sudden at 31 years old, he was swinging harder and faster than he ever had before. He was a revelation to that Toronto Blue Jays lineup, and he lengthened that lineup so much because all of a sudden you had this big bat in the 7-hole. Of course, he got busted for steroids. He tested positive after the season. Never saw or heard from him again. And I just want to bring that up because I think it's imperative for people to understand what the difference is between a guy who's a 4A player. And when I say that, I mean he's better than most AAA guys, but he's just not a major league guy, and a star. It's minuscule.
Yeah.
Mouse nuts worth, right? It's tiny. And this is why guys like Robinson Cano all of a sudden get busted for steroids at 38, because there's millions of dollars on the line.
Yeah.
So, of course, if you're not going to police it, you're going to get Garrett Coles coming out and using the sticky stuff. It made him $330 million. Like all this talk of what can we do to improve the game? We're changing rules. We're creating new things. And yet we're just throwing pesticides all over everything. And we're like, why are the bees dying? Like, I don't know, man. It's the more I look into this, the more I'm kind of like, what the hell is Major League Baseball doing? Like rosin's one thing. Sunscreen's one thing. Even pine tar. Listen, if hitters are going to be fine with it, allow it.
Well, and let's touch on that for a second. Because, again, we talked to Anthony Telford, former Expos pitcher, Nate Pearson's personal offseason pitching coach. He's old school. He says 90% of pitchers use sticky stuff. What he's missing out on is the fact that what he used when he played is not what's being used today.
Exactly.
This is not a matter of, I just need a little extra control. I got to help my command. This is, I've taken scientists and I don't even have to think anymore. I just got to rear back and throw it as hard as I bloody can. And the ball's just going to go where it's going to go. Right?
Like
walk rates are up. Hit by pitch is at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, Bryce Harper, he said, look, I know pitchers are using sticky stuff. I'm all for it. I don't want to get hit in the face.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to him this year? I wonder what his quote is now.
Yeah.
Famously
Same thing with Kevin Pillar.
Yeah.
And you know what it is? It's that all of a sudden you start adding 500 revolutions a minute to a baseball, and it's spinning and doing things pitchers can't necessarily control 100% of the time.
Well, they can't predict it because they haven't experienced it themselves. So all of a sudden you do everything the same to throw that high inside fastball, right? That 96 catches the top right corner of the batter or of the strike zone. You do everything the same, but now it's spinning at 2,700 RPM instead of 2,100 RPM. Mm-hmm. And instead of it just catching, because it's, normally slowly falling, instead it's staying up higher, boom, right into the kisser.
So I think the solution to this is they need to give a list of items you can use, and then they need a banned list. This gray area, this iffy area where old school ball players can say stuff like, well, we've used it all along, and they're not quite grasping the fact that this is shit that's been made in a lab. This is science. This is stuff that has no business being on a baseball. Like, I'm a little beside myself at how far Major League Baseball has let this get out of control, which is their MO. It's what they've done for every little friggin' thing. It's just like,
here's what I think they should do. They need to do a better job themselves of prepping the game balls beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say everything is banned. We are going to doctor the balls for you. We are going to work with Trevor Bauer and Bubba Harkins and whoever we need to. And we're going to pre-stick every single game ball. Everyone's going to use it. It's all going to be uniform and fair.
Yeah.
But if you have anything on your hat, if you have sunscreen on your neck or pine tar on your junk, I don't care where it is, your responsibility. When you take the mound, you're clean. Wash your arms before you get out there.
Yeah.
Period. Now then there's no excuses, right? It's like, no. It's sticky. Everyone's got command. Everyone's doing the same thing. But if you go out there with a dirty hat, put on a new one. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
agreed. I agree. We'll leave it at that. But for all of you out there who would like to look into this a little bit more,
I'll link to those baseball doesn't exist videos in the description.
So the baseball doesn't exist videos Adam will link to. He'll also put in the Hey Kami on TikTok guy who has all of the video up there. And feel free to check out that press conference from Schilt of the Cardinals, because it is very eye-opening and some weird stuff is happening in baseball. They're changing all sorts of rules and doing all sorts of stuff, but they're not addressing the elephant in the room.
Absolutely.
Anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Always appreciate it. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. Adam runs the Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube. All of our interviews are up, the Walk Off Podcast. And there's some really great interviews in there. I'm excited for you to all check out James Dykstra. Enjoy. It's a great story. Take care.